Hi, this is Craig, and this is another mindfulness podcast. This one, the theme is consumption. And what I mean by consumption is as a human, we have various ways in which we consume life. The most obvious is eating, so food. We consume food. And you could say that if you consume a lot of healthy, nutritious food, that your body feels quite good, feels quite healthy. If you're eating a lot of junk food, a lot of chips, a lot of fatty sort of foods, then your body begins to suffer as a result. So you could say that food can influence your body. And as well as food, we consume other things. We've got our awareness, this amazing sense that we have that can see and hear and touch and be with everything that's around us. And you could say we consume with our senses. So, what we watch, what we look at, we consume. You could say, if we're watching a lot of news or a lot of horror on the TV, that we kind of get used to it after a while. We consume this kind of stuff, and it can influence how we react in the future or how we're influenced in the future. After a while of watching kind of horror movies, for example, you might have found when you first watched them that they were quite horrific and quite scary. But after a while, you get used to them and they're not as scary as they once were because you've already seen it, you've already consumed everything that's there. So, consumption actually can change how your personality or how your mind works in relationship to everything in the world. So, the one thing I'm going to talk about today, obviously, because it's mindfulness, is our consumption of our thinking. And you could say we also consume our thoughts. So, if you're worrying a lot about the future, then you're consuming worry, you're enlarging your worry. Just as if you were on social media and you were talking about how worried you are, then that worrying is continuing, and other people are also then consuming it with reading your social media posts. So it's very interesting, and it's also very important to notice what it is we do talk about, what we do say to ourselves, what we are thinking about. All of this stuff we consume. And if you're listening or watching or reading a lot of negative judgment about things, there's criticism, there's gossip, there's blame, there's all this judgment in this world. And if we're tapped into that, we end up judging ourselves, we end up becoming a judgment in some ways. And this can influence the way we are. The more we judge and the more we kind of sink into a consumption of anxiety or anger, and at the moment the world is very angry with a lot of different people, and there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of anxiety. If you're tapping into that and consuming it, whether you're watching it on the TV or reading about it or posting on social media, then you're feeding those things. You're feeding your anxiety, your anger, through those kind of articles. And so, with mindfulness, we start to notice what it is we consume, and we decide with our mindfulness, without really thinking about it too hard, but just with a feeling that some things are perhaps good for us and some things are perhaps not so good for us. And so we follow this inner wisdom, this insights that we have to do the right action, to follow the right things. So you may decide after a while of watching the news, for example, that you might want to limit how often you watch the news because you're noticing with your mindfulness that it's creating anxiety within you. So straight away, you're kind of lessening the anxiety by continuing the subconscious practice of watching the news just because that's what you're used to doing. You're making a conscious choice to change your consumption. And so, mindfulness is about being conscious and about being awake and about noticing how we are feeling in each moment. So, it's really good to notice what it is we consume. And our thinking mind is really interesting because it's based on everything that's happened in our past and everything we've consumed in our past. So when something happens now, we automatically, if we're not being mindful, we're in our subconscious, so we automatically go to the strongest attribute that's in our mind, the thing that we've fed the most. So you could say that people who are worriers, anxious people or angry people, they've been feeding those emotions all their life. They've been feeding their anxiety all their life, or their anger all their life. And so something happens in the moment and they immediately respond in anger or in anxiety because they're so used to doing it. So what you practice actually is what you become. So if you're consuming a lot of angry stuff and a lot of anxiety stuff, then you're becoming more anxious and you're becoming more angry. If you're consuming lots of kindness and lots of gratitude and lots of joy at life, then that's what your future is going to be. So what you practice is what you become. So consumption is inviting you to change your consumption, to look at what it is you think. And often we think negatively. We worry about the future, or we're dwelling on the past. We've got grudges or anger or resentment. And those sort of things we need to notice of our mindfulness, because once we start to let go of them, we're no longer feeding the emotions that they're attached to. And we're becoming different. We're changing our personality. Every time you practice mindfulness, you're giving yourself kindness. So you could say that's feeding your kindness. It's feeding your compassion. It's feeding your peacefulness. And you could equate all these things in your mind as a garden. And we've all got plants in this garden, our mind garden. So we've got an anxiety plant. We've got an angry plant. We've also got a mindfulness plant, a joyful plant, a happiness plant. Which ones are you going to feed? So being positive about yourself not only gives you self-compassion and kindness in that moment, but it's also feeding your kindness plant that's in your mind. And so when a future action happens, you're more likely to act out of kindness to yourself and to others than if you weren't practicing kindness. So this is why we use kindness meditations and things like that, because we're wanting our kindness to grow. So you want to water the things that you want to grow. You don't want to water things like anger or anxiety. They're there and they may come up, but when they come up, if you're holding them with your mindfulness and you're caring for them and you're breathing with them, just as I sort of specified in the Sitting with Emotions podcast as part of this series, you're not feeding your anger or anxiety with more thoughts. You're stopping your thinking and you're breathing with the feeling and you're giving kindness to that feeling. So it's watering your kindness plant and it's also lessening your anxiety and anger plant. And you see where your future lies if you keep doing these kinds of things. You end up with less anxiety and less anger and more kindness and more peacefulness and more mindfulness. So that's really the essence of what consumption is about. So just notice what it is you consume in your daily life. See if there's any things you can change. And if there's things that come up that you're not happy with or you're uncomfortable with, instead of fueling them with more thinking about the subject, or judging, or blaming, or criticizing, come back to yourself with mindfulness, because you'll be growing your mindfulness plant and your kindness plant, and you will feel better, and your future will in turn feel better. It may take a little while, but this is what we do. So we're going to do a little meditation just now, just to feed our kindness and our mindfulness. So I invite you to close your eyes and sit wherever you're sitting. And I will strike my little bell here just to begin. And we'll have a go. So just start by noticing your breath. Just really notice your in-breath and your out-breath. Really feel the air going into your lungs on your in-breath and follow all the way through on your out-breath. Breathing in, you know you're breathing in. Breathing out, you know you're breathing out. And just notice if your mind wanders away from your breath. And just smile if it does. And gently bring your focus back to your breath. Breathing in deeply. Breathing out slowly. Just take this moment just to observe how you're feeling. Just noticing any emotions or body sensations. Whatever's there, just breathe with what's there. Just welcoming everything, accepting everything. Breathing in, you're aware of your body. Breathing out, you're calming your body. And just tune in to any sounds that you can hear. Just noticing the sounds, all the quiet. Just resting for a while in that quietness. Breathing in the quiet. Breathing out the tension. And as you breathe in, just breathe in a wave of kindness to your body. Just having gratitude for everything that it does for you. And just breathe out that kindness and gratitude into your room and into the world. Breathing in gratitude. Breathing out kindness. And just smile to yourself, knowing that you're giving yourself and your body space to heal, to rest, just being in the present moment. And just know that every time you do this, you're growing your mindfulness within you, helping your future. So just take another few conscious breaths. And just when you're ready, just gently open your eyes, come back to your room. So thank you for having a short meditation and for listening about consumption. And I hope that it's giving you some things to ponder. That's the end of this podcast. As I say, there's more of these coming, and there's hopefully you're getting a whole resource here of mindfulness practice. So I hope it's helping, and I will speak to you again soon. Thank you for listening.